Welcome to the Political Ferret Show. New content will be uploaded every Wednesday and Sunday, and if you like this kind of content, consider becoming a Patreon and help with just $1 a month to make the change possible. In Steve Turley's analysis about Austrian action to close down mosques, he pointed this out.
Globalism is by definition transcultural. And so all of this is to say that we're not dealing with cheap racist Islamophobia here, as Ankara is accusing Austria of. This isn't cheap racist Islamophobia. This is nothing less than Austrians reasserting sovereignty over their own nation, culture, and traditions. And as such, it's Austria that is securing and safeguarding the future of a distinctively European civilization. And as such, they are calling out the absolute lie of multiculturalism. I mean, let's be blunt. If Austrian culture were not a good and indeed superior culture, why then does it have so many immigrants? I mean, the same can be said for Europe as a whole.
But if you follow this kind of thought, then you have to ask, why did the pilgrims not integrate in the Indian culture? I mean, they were migrants after all, and they never integrated in the American native culture. Why not? Well, to be intellectually honest, we have to dig a little bit deeper. You see, there is this left-leaning notion that all migrants are the same. The funny thing is, the right says pretty much the same, but it comes essentially from a left-leaning point of view. Let's dive into that. In reality, we have a lot of individuals, and they are different. They believe in different things and do different things. We call this individualism. Of course, there is another idea to that. You can point out, well, this is not really the case. You see, all these groups are fit in either of one groups, the oppressor or the oppressed. And based on the notion, the oppressors are the minority or the majority. However, there are different ideas to that. But in the end, it is always this dichotomy, oppressor and oppressed, and the oppressed have to fight the oppressor and rule them pretty much. We call this collectivism. This comes in all shapes and forms, but very prominent right now is the left-leaning collectivism. So to make the things a little bit more complicated, because just pointing out that there are two groups, the oppressed and the oppressors, did not work. Marx tried that. It did not work. So we have to deal now with neo-Marxism, and they do something different. They say, okay, these groups are now divided in, let's say, males and females, and then we forget about that, and you have, of course, natives and migrants. So if you stay there, you can go, of course, and make it more complicated, but if you stay there with these two dichotomies, you can now point out that there are female natives, that there are female immigrants, that there are male natives, and that there are male immigrants. And then you go down with your little oppression pyramid where you find out who is the most oppressed. And we start, of course, on the bottom, and we just declarate that female immigrants are the most oppressed. And then can the male immigrants, they oppress the women, but they get oppressed by all the natives. So then we have the female natives, they oppress the others, and then they are, of course, oppressed by the male natives. And then we are in the end, and we know who is those who we have to give a lot of resources because they are so oppressed, and we have something to do against that. And this is a very lefty notion. The funny thing is that now migrants used to be a quite neutral word. It is now something of a dirty word. So we replaced it pretty much by the word refugees at this point. There are no migrants in Europe anymore. Everybody is a refugee. If you migrate from America to Europe, you're clearly a refugee. Everybody is a refugee. We call this in Middle Europe the Euphemismus-Tretmühle, the Euphemismus treadmill, which means that you replace words who became not neutral but have a little bit of a bad taste with other words, as we replace the word cripple completely out. And this is not politically correct to call somebody a cripple anymore, although it was just a neutral word in 100 years ago or something like that. This is this Euphemismus-Tretmühle, and it goes on and goes on and goes on. Refugees right now has already some dirt to it, so it is quite interesting what they will come up next. Perhaps people with... Oh no, Merkel came up with this idea of Germans who are not there as long as the other Germans. So it goes pretty much down that way. So the interesting thing is you can come for different reasons. You can come as a tourist, you can come as a guest worker, you can come as a classical migrant, you can come as an invader, and you can come as a conqueror. So what about that? Well, pretty much it differs how long you want to stay. For a tourist never stays longer than 1 year. He will never do that. A guest worker might stay for 20 years, but he will go back home eventually. A migrant is here to stay. He goes over, he wants to stay. An invader is an interesting thing. An invader comes over, this might be a soldier of sorts. If some American goes to Iraq, he's an invader. He goes there, stays for not all too long, and then leaves. He has no intention to stay. And then we have the conqueror. The conqueror also comes to stay. So the interesting thing is, if you boil it just down to that, to say, okay, do you come to stay or not? The migrant and the conqueror is hard to distinguish. Very hard to distinguish. You have to go deeper there. The interesting thing is that a migrant will integrate. He will go over there because he wanted to go over there because he sees benefits over there. The conqueror, on the other hand, will not integrate. He does not even expect him to integrate. He comes over to conquer the land and to push his own agenda, his rules onto this newly conquered land. So, the pilgrims did not come as classical migrants, they came as conquerors. That's important to understand, and I think this is one of the reasons America have a tough time to pretty much point that out, because to do that would mean to point out that they are descendants of conquerors, and they don't want to do that. But again, the Muslims in Europe right now come as conquerors, not as classical migrants. You see if somebody is a migrant or a conqueror based on what he does. A migrant comes because of the good things. He says, oh, I go over there, I want to live there because there are opportunities, there are freedoms, there are things that I want. I know a lot of Muslims who came over here because they say they do not care about the faith and they can ignore that here pretty much. So this is a normal migrant. A conqueror, on the other hand, comes over because there is weakness, because he sees an opportunity to take power. And the West has right now problems with weakness. This is not in question. We have a problem with weakness. So conquerors come over when there is weakness. They do not come because they value the West. They come because they want to conquer the West. So is it possible that migrants become conquerors and conquerors become migrants? Oh, of course, and it happens all over in history. If we go very, very far back, let's say in the year of 1900 or something like that, the Vikings come over to French, invaded the Normandy, and then were completely integrated in society. They did not behave as Vikings anymore, they did behave as Frenchies. So on the other hand, when the Goten came over to Rome in about 200, when they were just refugees and were fleeing, under 100 years they started to rebel and started to become conquerors of parts of Rome. They were in the beginning peaceful migrants and then evolved into conquerors. So again, between conqueror and migrant, this can change. One and the same person might change his point of view and a migrant becomes a conqueror and the conqueror becomes a migrant. This is absolutely possible. And a lot of leftists pretty much point out, yes, they come over as conquerors, but if we give them a hand and be very nice to them, they will evolve the mindset of the migrant and will adopt our things. But the problem is when we give them our hand and say, oh, we help you, and so on, they see this as weakness, and this improves on this idea of conquest. To say, oh, they are even weaker than we thought. They even help us with conquering them. So this is a problem. So this left notion does not work. Again, to understand the difference between a migrant and a conqueror, you have to see what he does. It is not that what he is will define what he do, but what he does defines what he is. Somebody who does already integrate without force, without anything, is a migrant. Whoever does not integrate is a conqueror, which means that we in Europe are full with conquerors, not migrants. And this is a problem. These guys are not classical migrants who came over because they value the West, and to point out, oh, if they do not value the West, why did they come over?
Austrian culture were not a good and indeed superior culture. Why then does it have so many immigrants?
They did come over because they want to conquer the West. You have to make this distinction to be intellectually honest. This is very, very, very important. If you point out pretty much, and I know the fringe does it, also on the left and the right, both say, oh, all the migrants are the same. This is not true. If somebody comes over from, I don't know, Namibia and says, I value the Austrian culture so much, and he runs around in lederhosen or something like that, and I know people who do that pretty much, it's fine for me. I do not care for ethnic homogeneity. I really do not care, sorry. This is not a problem. So this is the thing. You have to distinguish between a classical migrant who comes over because he values what he found there, and an invader and a conqueror. These are not the same things. Thanks for watching. Like, share and subscribe. Tell me what you think about it in the comments, and have a wonderful day.